The man silently aimed at his wife's buttocks, and then plunged the needle in forcefully. When his wife regained consciousness, she found herself tightly tied to the bed. She struggled and pleaded with her husband, but he mercilessly shut the door. Then he unlocked her phone and started going through her messages with other men. When he found out she was pregnant, he pulled out the anesthetic again. Even though his wife was already defenseless, he still pushed the needle into her without hesitation. 6 months ago, David, an emergency doctor, was in a severe car accident during a mission, leaving him permanently paralyzed from the waist down. His wife Mary became even more attentive in caring for him. She took care of his daily needs meticulously, and even went out to work every day to support the household. Yet despite this, David was still not satisfied. He constantly feared that Mary would eventually leave him. So while Mary was preparing dinner, he secretly installed a monitoring device on her phone. He then began tracking her every move without letting her out of his sight. Even normal work calls she received, he would secretly listen in. One day Mary gently petted the neighbor's puppy. Even this action sparked his jealousy, so he deliberately filled a steak with sharp steel needles and fed it to the innocent puppy, because only by eliminating all potential threats could his twisted mind feel a moment of peace. Kind-hearted Mary was completely unaware and was planning to pick up a part-time job that evening, as the household expenses were hard to cover, but David strongly opposed it. He believed night work hid some sinister intent, so he mocked and ridiculed Mary, causing her deep pain. But seeing her husband in a wheelchair, she chose silence. She quietly stood up and left the room. Late at night, severe pain tore David from his sleep. He struggled to get his pain medication, only to find it was all gone. When he called Mary, he found her phone was off. Completely desperate, he searched the house cabinets in pain. Fortunately, he found the backup medication Mary had prepared, but after taking it with milk, he hid the bottle away. When Mary returned home exhausted, David immediately put on a carefully prepared act. He said he nearly fainted from pain last night and couldn't find his medication all night. Mary checked the medicine cabinet and indeed found it empty. She apologized repeatedly and explained that she had been too busy with work and had neglected it. Then she quickly went downstairs to buy medicine. Watching her leave, David felt a twisted sense of pleasure. He did all this just to make Mary feel guilty and keep her trapped in their relationship forever. That day, David overheard Mary talking with her best friend. Mary confided about the pain medication. Her friend scolded David as a scumbag and urged her to get a divorce quickly. David was furious upon hearing this. His sense of crisis drove him to prepare a candlelit dinner. When Mary returned home, he launched an emotional attack. He kept confessing his wrongdoings. This performance made Mary feel somewhat reassured. He thought he had finally learned empathy, but when she went back to the room to rest, she accidentally saw the monitoring software on the computer. She was instantly disappointed. All his tenderness had been calculated. She couldn't believe that all her devotion was met with surveillance in return. Heartbroken, she began packing her bags decisively. When David came out after showering, he saw the monitoring screen. Only then did he sober up completely. He realized all this was caused by himself, but being disabled, he had no way to stop it. 6 months passed like this, and life alone was extremely hard for him. So he went to Mary's workplace, hoping to start over, but he discovered she had a new boyfriend. When David saw the man's face, he became furious. It was his former colleague responsible for the ambulance accident that left him disabled. They were choosing baby supplies together. The footage showed Mary was already pregnant. David couldn't accept it. If he hesitated, he would lose her forever. So he obtained anesthetics through hospital connections and carefully planned a chance encounter with Mary. At first, Mary refused to pay any attention to this scumbag, but David used the excuse that her passport was still at home to coax her. To retrieve her documents, Mary had no choice but to return home with him. Just as Mary bent down to search, David ambushed her from behind with the anesthetic. He restrained and controlled her. After confirming Mary was pregnant, he sent a breakup text to her new boyfriend using her phone. Then he threw the phone into the river, completely cutting off Mary's outside communication. The next day he injected her with sedatives again. The sounds in the house were heard by the neighbor next door. The neighbor came to check. They asked David about his wife's condition. David lied. While imprisoning his wife, he flirted with a female doctor in the rehab room. That night on his way home, he ran into Mary's boyfriend. David claimed he had never met Mary. When Mary woke up, she found David had untied her. Just as she was about to get out of bed to escape, she realized her legs were completely paralyzed. David had injected her with an epidural anesthetic while she slept. This drug in a certain dosage immobilizes a person. If injected repeatedly over time, it can cause permanent paralysis like David's. Now Mary's legs were completely disabled. That evening David prepared a big dinner for Mary. Seeing her obediently eat the food he offered greatly satisfied his twisted mind. Mary only pretended to comply, but constantly plotted how to escape. Suddenly Mary grabbed a wine glass and smashed it hard on David's head. As David was stunned, he suddenly braced himself and fell to the floor. Mary screamed desperately and struggled toward the door with all her strength. The moment she opened the door, David injected her with drugs again. again. Mary pounded on David's legs desperately. She struggled only a few times. Then the drugs took effect. Mary passed out. At this moment there was a knock at the door. The neighbor heard the commotion.
¿Qué haces?
Voy a llamar a la policía. He oído ruidos y a una mujer gritando. Estoy seguro de que era Vanessa.
Aquí no está Vanessa ni hay nadie.
¿Qué te ha pasado en la cabeza? Voy a llamar a la policía.
David opened the door and let the neighbor in. The neighbor saw Mary collapsed on the floor and immediately wanted to call the police. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, David stabbed him several times from behind. The neighbor died instantly. David called a friend and paid him to clean up the crime scene. But the next day the police came anyway. It was because Mary was missing. Her boyfriend had reported it to the police. Facing the police's questioning, David lied through his teeth. After the questioning, the police found nothing unusual and left. After the police left, David took the keys out of Mary's bag. While Mark was not at home, he sneaked into Mark's bathroom. When Mark came home to wash up, David quickly emerged from behind the shower curtain and injected him with morphine. Mark reacted, and they struggled. The drug quickly took effect. Mark immediately passed out. David forced him to ingest drugs and alcohol through a funnel. Then he staged the scene in the living room to look like a drug overdose. Thus the cause of death appeared to be excessive drinking and drug use. After killing Mark, David returned home. He gave Mary her medication again. Now Mary's legs could no longer function properly. David's goal was finally achieved. Mary, like him, now also needed a wheelchair. David even prepared a crib and stroller for Mary's unborn child. He also pulled out a ring and proposed remarriage to Mary.
¿Te quieres casar conmigo? Cuando confíe en ti nos casaremos.
David constantly monitored Mary. One day while Mary was in the bathroom, she turned on the faucet as cover. She struggled to stand from the wheelchair. Then she found a nail clipper and hit it. That night, Mary had a fever.
Vamos a apartar al bebé. Bajo la farmacia.
David tied Mary tightly to the bed. After David left, Mary used the hidden nail clipper to cut the ropes. She painfully moved toward the door. Using a pre-prepared screwdriver, she pried open the room door. But due to the effects of the drugs, her movements were extremely difficult. Just reaching the elevator, she ran into David returning with medicine. Mary had no choice but to escape via the stairs. A life or death chase ensued in the stairwell. After a fierce struggle, Mary pulled out a screwdriver. She stabbed David forcefully in the shoulder, but David held tightly onto the nearby railing. Mary stabbed David with the screwdriver again. After being stabbed, David immediately fell from the stairs. Both were sent to the hospital. Mary, temporarily paralyzed from the drugs, recovered quickly. David, however, wasn't so lucky. Now only his eyes could move. He would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair.
¿Te alegras de verme? A partir de ahora, seré yo quien cuide de ti.
Mary pushed David out of the hospital. A subtle smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. What would David's life be like from now on? Perhaps he would only sit in his wheelchair, watching the woman he loved Mary date other men. David would endure countless pains in the future, but no matter what he went through, it was all the result of his own doing. Excessive possessiveness amplifies the evil in human nature. Yet in the end, all of it would inevitably bring retribution upon himself.